Welcome back to The Night Shift, the UFO podcast where everybody knows your name. And your safe space for talking about UFOs, UAPs, NHI, disclosure, psionics, neuromeditation. Is that what he called it? Neuromeditation? I don't know. We're going to get into it. The Jake Barber interview that's setting the internet on fire. I think it's safe to say. We're going to talk to Eric Schlimmer, who's back with us with a really cool success story from our previous episode, which I'm excited to share with. I hope we can talk about it a little bit. I didn't get into that with him before the show, but it's cool. It's a cool story. You guys are going to want to hear it. And yeah, we're going to get into. We had a completely different show planned for tonight, but the Jake Barber interview was just so good on Ross Coulthart, News Nation, with Matt Pines, that we kind of pulled a 180 and went in a different direction here. So shout out to everybody in the chat. I see Butch is here, Rain of Rain. Hey, Rain of Rain, Ebony McKickass, Zoltan. Who else? Psionic Man, Chris Hovord, of course, Ebony McKickass, and Chris, the heart and soul of the Night Shift, Mod Squad. And of course, producer, musician, The Wind Beneath My Wings.
The Wind Beneath My Wings. I knew it was coming. I was waiting for it. It's my
How
favorite.
Are you,
it's my favorite part of the week was when you say that. I'm like, oh, thanks, Dad. Thanks.
Chip off the old block.
It's been quiet the last few weeks, and then the last week or so, there's a lot of people have said a lot of things, which I think is why you really wanted to switch things up tonight, because a lot of stuff has been said that needs to be talked about a little bit, I think.
Yeah, really.
A lot of promises being made.
A lot of promises are being made, and it's starting to get a little warm in here. Like, if everybody's promises turn out to be real, then it's going to get really crazy in the next 2-3 years.
Less than.
And I'm here for it.
Less than that.
Yeah, less than that, maybe. Depends on whose promise you're listening to. Yeah. But yeah, absolutely. Eric, how you doing, man?
Oh, hold on a second. Let me make sure.
Eric had a power cord malfunction, and we had to abort.
We can hear you now, Eric.
Yeah, I fixed it, and luckily I collect things when I'm in the mountains, and this oddly shaped rock is basically holding this all together. I had to jam the power cord in, and now this rock that I picked up years ago is now coming in really handy. Really handy.
What's the fire hazard look like from where you're sitting? Is it bad?
8 out of 10 tops.
8 out of 10.
Yeah.
It's the rat's nest of cables that are all kind of plugged into extension cords. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like when you take the Christmas lights out in November.
Oh, my God.
It's great to be back, and great to see both of you. And I remember last time I was really complimenting you about the music. It's so cool, the Miami Vice vibe. I really like it. And now you have this. I just want everything you guys have. Now you have this amazing trucker hat. How does someone get one of those?
I'll get you a trucker hat, Eric. Don't worry about it. Okay. Maybe just keep an eye on your mailbox. One will arrive.
Well, Christmas comes early this year.
Christmas comes early this year. Thanks for the shout out on the trucker hat, though. I wore it just for you guys.
Thank you.
I feel like I'm working the logo a little too hard, though. I got it everywhere. You're back from the mountains. You were on a trip. You were hiking in the wild wilderness.
Yeah, I try to spend a lot of time in the mountains. I live here in Colorado Springs. I've got 1 million acres of public land, 2-minute walk from my house. So I spend a lot of time in the mountains because I find it really relaxing, and I like the challenge and psychological reward. Luckily, I've been able to hike most of my life, and I'm one of those people who kind of hiking is my main priority, and then I make money on the side just to kind of keep hiking.
That's the way to live your life. That's the right way, I think, right?
It's pretty good.
That's the only way to do it. Have you seen anything weird lately?
Related to UAPs?
Maybe. I don't know. You see anything weird? I feel like if you're out there long enough, you've got to start to see weird stuff.
Well, both my UAP experiences were outside. One was in Colorado, one was in New Mexico, both in the mountains in remote areas. Non UAP, I found a fully intact bobcat skeleton.
I saw that.
On my last hike, I've been hiking for 35 years, never found one. And then I hiked 20 minutes later and I found where a deer got killed by a mountain lion and partially buried. These were like within a half mile of each other. Both I had never seen in my life.
So when you see that, does that make you nervous for what's going down in that area, or do you, as an experienced hiker, are you not
No,
worried about that?
plus, no. It's backpacking is really safe. Like for example, if you look at injuries and deaths, it's safer than soccer. So it's a
Is that
really
right?
safe sport. When I found the deposited, freshly killed mountain lion, I was with somebody I could probably outrun.
Yeah. Do you ever pack heat when you hike, just in case?
I
Like
don't.
if you run into bears or anything, do you ever like?
Yeah, I've only seen four bears. Two were in my backyard. Um, and most of these, especially these big animals, um, God only knows how many I've come close to and they fled before I got there. They generally don't want anything to do with anyone. It was a different story. I've done two trips to Alaska, and up there, they have grizzly bears who will eat you. And so we travel in a group, make a fair amount of noise, and then we also had bear spray with us. Just so people know, don't misuse bear spray. It's not like bug spray. Don't put it on you. It it's pepper spray which disperses bears. But overall, hiking is a really safe sport, and knock on wood, I've never had a serious injury.
And you've only had two UAP experiences hiking though, that you're sure of.
Only two, one in 2024 and one in 2022. And in UAPs, there's a lot of speculation. Why don't we throw in some more? I think my first experience happened because I was studying the subject, which you've had other people have a hunch that's why they saw something. Some are random, but mine was not. It seemed very intentional.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that they kind of touched on in that Jake Barber interview, which I want to
Hmm.
dig into today. But before we go to that, can you talk about the thing you told me? You had somebody that reached out.
Yeah,
Can
I
you?
could speak on it briefly. So, I had someone reach out to me through the outcome counseling website. So, that's my consultancy. So, if it's an individual who has a UAP experience or they're just kind of stressed out on the matter, they can come talk to me. If it's an organization that wants to learn more about UAPs, because eventually they'll have to comment on it, they could talk to me too. So, I got an email from a very nice gentleman, and he basically said, "Hey, something happened to me. I could use help uh, from someone like you." I said, "Oh, did you just find him randomly?" He says, "No, I saw you on night shift." So I'm really glad I appeared. I'm really glad I'm back, because I would like people to know that there is someone out there who can be an objective listener, how experienced working with clients. And if you need somebody to talk to, you're more than welcome to talk to me. So thanks to you bringing me on, this person probably would not have found me.
That is awesome, and I'm really glad to hear that. It made my day when you made my week when you told me that story.
Mhm.
Um, can we show the us? We have your website is outcomecounseling.com, right?
Yep.
Is that right? I wonder
Yeah,
if we
I'll
can
show
just
it.
pull
Hold a
it up.
second. I'll show it.
And can you just tease out a little bit more about exactly like how you approach conversations with people who have had anomalous experiences? Like what's different about someone talking to you versus talking to their, another mental health professional?
Right. So, a person who has had a UAP experience or is studying the matter and is getting stressed out, if they want to talk to any kind of professional, they're already starting at a disadvantage. They're a little bit in the hole because the therapist, just going with the odds, or the consultant, whoever it is, chances are good they just don't know a lot about UAPs, which is fine. We can't be interested in everything. However, if you went to a professional and said, well, I have depression because my wife divorced me, okay, they know about divorces, they know about depression, but it's that disadvantage coming in where the person you're talking to might not be well educated in the subject. And people who I've worked with in the past, rightfully so, even though it's me, are really nervous because they don't want me to disqualify them. They don't want me to minimize. They don't want me to give advice, which a lot of people have done. And they're pleasantly surprised. They come in and somebody might say, hey, this might sound crazy. I think I was abducted. And all I say is, okay. And they're like, what do you mean, okay? And I'm like, okay, tell me more about it. Where I think a lot of other practitioners would be like, oh, okay. It's a different okay.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay. Right. I'm glad that I'm there for this population. There are quite a few other people actually who are in the mental health field and do study this. They're afraid to come out because of stigma and ridicule. Some are psychologists I know,
Yeah.
uh, psychiatrists I know, and they're like, I'm not doing this in public. There's been some studies done on how stigma plays a role in professions. And one of the top three reasons, why don't you talk about this? They said, ridicule. My colleagues will ridicule me. Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Is it, I feel like people who've had strange, anomalous experiences, if they go to a traditional mental health care practitioner, the expectation is that if they walk in with a story of extraterrestrial contact, the next thing the mental health professional is going to try to do is figure out how to diagnose that as a mental disorder, or find the appropriate mental disorder to file that under. In other words, look for a problem instead of starting from a place of like, okay, I believe you believe what you're saying to me. Does that make sense? Am I understanding the difference there?
You are understanding it correctly. So, since I work as a consultant, I don't, though I am a therapist, I wear my therapist hat in another capacity. With UAP clients, I'm a consultant. And so I don't work with insurance. I don't work with claims. I don't have to offer a diagnosis. I don't do testing, any of that. But when you're working in the healthcare profession, you must offer a diagnosis because that's how billing works, right? So it's kind of like if you break
Right.
your arm and you go to the doctor, they're like, okay, he broke his arm, now we can bill. Um, if the doctor's answer to why did he visit your emergency room and you're like, oh, I don't know, he just kind of wanted to stop by. Yeah, we're not paying for social calls, right?
Right.
So they have to diagnose something. Now, it could be a diagnosis that is not reflective on your character or does not make you sound crazy. So if a UAP experiencer came to a therapist, psychiatrist, somebody like that, they told the story, the healthcare provider is a little suspicious of that, but they could tell that the person was anxious. They could simply diagnose generalized anxiety disorder, and that will get the job done, right? So it could be so you can actually diagnose symptoms while being suspicious of the person's story.
I see. I see.
They could do that.
So, and so when someone talks to you, they're able to basically engage with someone who's an understanding audience, who's going to begin from where they're at. You're going to meet them where they are and walk them through whatever the thing is that they're trying to work through, and at least just give them some stability to understand, like, this is a big psychological event. It's a big step. I feel like this is how it's going to unfold. Like, what do you guys think? As we're going to find out more in a second when we look at this Jake Barber interview in more detail. But the way these guys talk about it, Jake Barber and Matt Pines with the Skywatcher project, they're saying that this is already kind of a done deal, and we're going to just get up to speed as they reveal the things that they're finding out to be true and that they already sort of know. And that's going to culminate in this aha moment. When you have a bunch of people, millions or billions of people who have been told this isn't real, for 100 years over and over and over again. There's going to be some adjustment phase that has to happen for people to accept. Because, I mean, one of the things Jake Barber talks about in this is what they look like. And that's really hard to imagine. And so I imagine if you've seen it with your own eyes and you're trying to like square that with your pre-existing notions of what's possible, that's got to stress people out a lot. I mean, you would need somebody to kind of lean on in a situation like that.
Yeah, and this client I mentioned earlier and a couple others that I work with, I'm just a guy with a master's degree and a background in therapy, and I like to think I know quite a bit about UAPs. That's all it is. What they're really getting when they work with me is what we call the peer support model. And I think that's best. I think that is the best model for anyone who wants to talk about their experience. So what we're doing right now is the peer support model. You don't necessarily have to be a professional, and you talk about it and process it using your own talents and your own experiences. I think the peer support model is going to be the premier way to go about addressing this.
And the website is outcomecounseling.com. If anyone's interested in talking to you or getting in contact, they can go visit you at outcomecounseling.com and get in touch, and then you'll take them the rest of the way.
Yep.
Awesome. Eric, thank you for that story. That was just awesome to hear, and I wanted to share it with the audience because I thought they should know that's we're trying to lean into the audience here on the channel and put the audience first and make the audience the center of the conversation, or at least try to give the audience a seat at the table for the conversation about what exactly is happening. And I think it's really important that every time we find someone who's got a resource like yours that they can access, we really want to put that out there and make people aware of it. So thanks for sharing that again.
Yeah, and by the way, there are now a lot of UAP-centric podcasts. I think you've done the best job of offering a sense of community and basically making it a priority. There are a lot about the phenomenon itself, the nuts and bolts, but this seems to be the most communal UAP podcast I'm aware of, and that must be by design.
Thank you for saying that. That is awesome. And it means more than you know. I think a lot of it is by design, and a lot of it is by, the design part of it is we set out with that intention in mind, but the execution is really the community coming together and just doing it. Like one of the big things that people talk about a lot, synchronicities, that seem to happen the more you involve yourself in this subject matter. And it's been like that since the beginning. It was the way that, I met Cole Watkins, who designed the logo, and he just knocked it out of the park. He just slam dunked this logo, and it was beautiful. And then it was Brent and Xander and our team that came together and formed the Discord server, and then people just started to get involved, and one thing led to another, and it really snowballed from there. But it's the community. I'm really proud of it, but it's the community self-generating and self-organizing, and I think that's really awesome. So I'm just as excited as anybody else to watch it grow and to be a part of it.
It seems to me that the sorry, I'm going to interject here for a moment. It seems to me that the allure at the moment is the videos, is the stories, is the information about the deep underground military bases and psionics and things like that. But I think we may be a little bit early, but absolutely at some point all of this is going to have to be addressed in terms of how it actually affects us as a population. And that's all we ever talk about, Clint. Even when we're not streaming and stuff, we talk about how this is going to affect the community. It's how it's going to affect me and you, and our families and things, and how it's going to affect our daughters in 20 years time, my daughter, your son in 20 years time, when they're trying to get a job and things like what. Those are questions that are going to come. Maybe we're a little bit early in trying to address them now, but at least there's a place for the people that want to try and get an answer sooner rather than later, you know?
That's really well said, Xander. And I think to some extent, a part of it has to do with a generational thing that's going on right now. And I kind of touch on this from time to time, but there's a generation of people in their 40s right now and 50s and 40s and older, but that grew up in a time where none of this technology really existed, but we had really good science fiction that was showing it and showing it to us. Like, this is what it looks like Flight of the Navigator I talk about from time to time, all these different movies. I'm doing this thing right now where I'm digging up all these little quotes from different films and stuff, and it's been a really fun project. And I'm watching all these different science fiction films from 30 years ago and shows and things. And you can see the bones of it, like, being put in place there. And then we watch this transition take place, and the internet goes from not being a thing or being a science fiction thing to being a real thing, to changing the world, to affecting everyone, to going into like all of these different directions. And as all this stuff is happening, we're starting to learn more and more about this non-human intelligence and these contact teams. And it's just starting to all become real. And I think there's a generation of people out there that are picking up on that. And we try to, here at the Night Shift, one of the things we try to do is dip into that a little bit stylistically. And I think that's where, like, in particular, Xander, your take musically on what the whole vibe is just perfperfect.
Well, that vibe is changing all the time as well. Like, there's a lot of people keep asking me like, what's going to happen? At the moment, I'm being like, musically, I'm being like pulled in like 3 or 4 different directions at the moment, because I just don't know like what the feeling is that I'm trying to get out there. So at the moment, it's kind of like I'm almost beholden to what's going. It's so strange to think of that as a musician. That I'm sort of beholden to what is actually happening in the UFO space as to where I go with things. At the moment, things are very chilled, so I've spoke to you that I want to do something a bit more chilled, but any moment, like this weekend, we're probably going to get some great information from Skywatcher on Monday, and it's like all of a sudden, things could go from 6 to midnight, pardon the pun, but things could get like spicy really quickly. And that's going to need a different approach from not just me musically, but you as a host, and Eric as well. Like once this becomes the mainstream, as I said, maybe we're a little bit early, but you're not wrong.
Yeah, that's a great. You just nailed it. It's one thing that I see consistently with the people involved here with what we're trying to do. Everyone is very empathetic, and I don't know. Everyone is creative. There's an artistic side to everyone that's deeply involved in this topic, whether they're a practicing artist or a working artist or not, or just you have an artistic taste, or there's something about you that's just there's a creative force at play, and I think that to a large extent, as creative people, we're trying to transmute the weirdness of the UFO reality into something that we can understand, and we do it through our own unique talents and gifts and abilities. You do it musically, but that's it. Like, that's processing it. Like, that's what we have to do as a civilization. So we're doing it. We're doing the work, and it's really cool to watch because I get bored. I'm a music guy, but I get bored with a lot of music because sometimes it just feels very flat and like there's nothing inspiring. And it's cool that there's this world. We're all sort of involved in it in different ways, where we're finding out that these astonishing things are true, and you're writing music to that in real time, inspired by it as you go. Like, you're documenting this as an artist in a way that I don't think anybody else is really doing yet, and I feel like that's
probably because there's really not a big market right now for that.
It doesn't need to be a big market.
But I'm not realistically, I'm not really doing it for anybody except myself at this point. I'm trying to find a sound that I feel like I can resonate with and how I'm feeling. And if anybody else enjoys that as well, then awesome. But yeah.
But that's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. You're honest as an artist. That's important. Let's talk about Jake Barber's internet melting video that dropped a day ago and set the world on fire. I don't know. Maybe it didn't set the world. I feel like it was a really big deal. Jake Barber, for those who didn't see it, went on Ross Coulthart's show on News Nation with Matthew Pines, who is their official spokesperson now, and gave a 90-minute interview where he talked about Skywatcher, episode 2, which is coming. He teased episode 2, and he revealed some of the things that are going to be shown in that episode, which were pretty amazing. We'll get into those in a second. And then they spent like an hour just talking about sort of the mechanics of what they're doing, why. Ross, I thought, asked some really great questions. It was just full of information that put a lot of other things into a different context. So I was thinking we could get into that tonight. Xander, let's start with you. What was your first sort of walk-away impression?
For a start, I thought it was good to get a proper update. I think, as you said, Ross asks the right questions, and it was good to see Ross returning to Jake Barber and starting to ask. There were certain questions that he asked, like, "Will we see this? Have you seen a jellyfish UAP?" and all of that. They're like the little questions that I always want to know the answer to. They're not really that important in the grand scheme of things, but they're the little details that the answers for which can actually normally reveal quite a lot. And what we're sort of starting to see, at least my response, and I'm saying this as a non-scientist, they seem to be approaching things with a scientific method, which is great. Like, and I'm sure that's Gary Nolan's influence. I'm sure it's Matthew Pine's influence as well. They have like tiers of substantive evidence, and where certain methods fall on those tiers. I think it's 1 to 6 is the sort of the
Like
tiering.
levels of evidence, 1 through
Yeah,
6.
exactly. And I think
With 6 being like rock solid, right?
6 being the world has changed. In fact, you know, I've got it.
He posted it on Twitter.
Yeah,
didn't he?
yeah. I have a link to it. If you bear with me a second, I'll be able to share it. But in essence, I was expecting for them to be at a 1, because we've seen one video from Sky, and bearing in mind this is what they consider to be the scientific method, and everything that we've not seen the data yet, but what they're saying is that they believe they're at between 2 and 3 out of 6, and I'll show you the actual levels and stuff now. There's quite a lot of words, so we don't have to go into everything. Let me share this tab. Here we go. So I was expecting them to really be at level 1, the whole preliminary observation, they're just testing the waters kind of thing. But then they sort of sprouted off, and I encourage everyone to watch the YouTube video in full because it's great. They sprouted off into their 2 main methods, which is the psionic method, which I'm sure you pointed out earlier, they've renamed for some reason, but they shouldn't have renamed it because psionics is really easy to remember. What did you call it earlier?
Neuro meditation. I think he called it neural.
Like
he calls it. Yeah, they go into this whole like 15-minute segue like off into why they changed the name, and they actually, to their credit, there's a lot of I don't want to say disagreement, but they don't all agree that moving on from psionics is the right.
Yeah,
like, psionics is still a great term. They basically settle on it. They're like
Ross like over an hour to get it, and I still don't think he's got it now. So they have the two aspects. They've got the psionics and what Ross called the dog whistle, which is effectively their technological method for attracting the phenomena, whatever they might be. So they placed psionics at level 2, meaning, you know, they have some success, but it's from what's said in the video, there's a lot of it, purely because it's based on human experience, that there's a human element involved, and you've got to trust what the humans are saying. They're saying, okay, that light in the sky, that's the one that I've invited to appear or whatever. So that's one level of the data. And then there's the level 3 data, which they placed their technological invitation into this category. Like whatever technology they've got, they send out some sort of signal, and they've placed that technology in level 3. And what I found really interesting is usually people afford themselves some sort of buffer for success, but Jake Barber just straight up said 100% of the time that we've used this technology, we've had phenomena show up every single time. So that's a huge takeaway for me. And it's similar to when I first listened to the telepathy tapes. It was like, what? Really? All right, show me the data. Here we go.
Yeah, that was a weird one. And then they said that, I think, didn't they say the psionics, it was finicky. They were like, with the people, everyone's different. Everyone's got their own like technique. Everyone's got their own way that they get into the zone. He was sort of walking through all the different challenges with using people. And then they were like, and one day to the next, the same person might not be able to get the same results. And we're not quite clear on exactly what's going on there. So, which seemed to make sense when he said something a while ago about Michael Herrera, and he was saying how when Herrera had his sighting of the Acon, that all those shipping containers there were like a bunch of shipping containers that were there and had air conditioners on them. And Jake Barber said those were for the telepaths to be in. And it seemed to me at the time that they need a lot of them. The way he described it, it's like they need 20 or 30 of these guys to really like in a group. Well, because why would you have that many unless you needed that many? And maybe that ties into what they were saying about how sometimes the psionic assets are a little bit unreliable from day to day and from person to person.
At the end of the day, the human brain isn't a binary system. We know that. Computers are. Computers, if we tell the computer to do something, it's going to do exactly that and nothing else. Whereas it's strange that we talked about it all week because we've been talking about AI and things. But if you tell a human brain not to think about an elephant in a room, they're going to think about an elephant in the room. There's no way of stopping them from doing that. And it's kind of, if these psionic assets in the past maybe have been used to bring down craft, as some of them may have been if they were involved in projects, or like to attract craft so that we can apparently shoot them down in some way, how do you not introduce that thought into your work process? If you know that it's happened, is it possible to fool these UAP or the phenomena to appear? So it might be it might be a case of the assets can only be used a certain number of times, or I don't know. I know nothing about these assets, and nobody does. So I'm not surprised if they're having trouble in some way.
Sure. Eric, what did you think? Did you get a chance to finish the entire thing?
Indeed, yeah. You sent it to me. I watched the whole thing. They strike me as very professional. They strike me as pretty transparent, which I think everybody will appreciate because a lot of organizations have not been transparent, particularly the DoD. I was wondering, and this is not a criticism of them, I would like to know what they're doing differently than other organizations have done. So you've got the Tedesco Brothers, Long Island, Jersey area, UAPX. I think they've been around for at least a decade. Mm-hmm. And I interviewed one of their physicists on the team. So they must be doing something different, but I'm not sure exactly what. I think a lot of data between these three groups are going to overlap. So they might kind of wash each other out, but they must have something that these other guys aren't doing, because they're just not going to go out there and do the same thing. So I'd like to know specifically what they're doing different. The frequency or whatever they used to bait UAPs. I don't have any trouble believing that. Um, and the one of the problems discussing UAPs is we only have the capacity to think about it like 2025 humans. Okay,
Yeah.
so what I'm about to say, the UAP occupants might not think like this, but I'd be mildly annoyed at the least if someone was calling me in an attempt to fool me. That would not go over well with me. And so I hope they've thought about this where you don't want to, no one likes to be baited. Okay. Do these beings do they care? I don't know. Okay. But I was thinking
Yeah.
about that when I was watching the interview. But it was interesting. I was reading a UAP document last night where this has been done before. And I think some arm of the DoD or something did it with some type of frequency. I've also read, and I believe this to be true, that the government has baited UAPs by just having a massive military movement and just throw a nuclear warhead on a truck and drive around because they notice. They
That's what
notice
Lou
these things.
Elizondo said. He said they
Yeah.
had they were going to put a fleet of nuclear powered vessels
Mhm.
like all together in one
Yeah.
isolated part of the ocean, and then they had some kind of a EMP trap or something. I don't know. They had like a ghost trap from Ghostbusters they were going to spring on this thing.
Right. Right. So if I'm remembering this correctly, and if it is true, I just kind of glanced over it. They did it 14 times. 14 times UAP showed up to check it out. Okay, so there has been some baiting in the past. There was talk, Lou Elizondo mentioned it briefly, that they might use some kind of technology to actually down the craft. Now, again, I'm thinking as a 2025 human, if you bait me, I'm annoyed. And if you bait me and bring my ship down, I'm just going to be pissed. All right, so I don't I can't comment it as an expert. My personal opinion is I don't know if this is such a good idea. I just don't know. Okay, but
That's a
that's
good
not
hot take.
yeah, but that's not to discourage them from what they're doing. To be quite honest, I was I did I was not warm to Jake Barber in the beginning. I didn't know who this guy was. He's saying a lot of stuff that can't be corroborated. During the recent interview, I've warmed up to him quite a bit. And the moment I finished the interview, I emailed them and said, "How can I help?" And hopefully I'll hear back from them. My only talent is I'm good at talking to people, so I don't know how much I'm worth there. But Ross is a great interview. He's been in this field since the beginning. Great questions and straight answers, which is what people want.
He did ask some really straightforward questions that I was glad to hear him ask.
Hmm.
Like one of them was, how do we know one of the biggest criticisms of Jake Barber and Skywatcher is that it's some kind of secret op by the CIA or some intelligence agency to roll out disclosure in a way that gets them off the hook. And he responded, I gave him credit for asking the question. I thought that was important that he asked it. And their response was a little interesting. It was kind of like, we want to be involved with the government. They're not bad guys. They're just in a corner right now, and they need some help to get out of the corner that they're painted into. And I thought that phrasing was really interesting. That was how Jake Barber and Matt Pines both kind of phrased it at various points in the interview. They were like, yeah, it's just, they seem to be painted into a corner, and maybe we can help them out of that corner. They said it doesn't exist, but it obviously does. So there was that. And then a lot of the stuff they talked about, I feel like is almost like a side. It's a separate, it doesn't feel like the same conversation that we've been having for the last 50 years about flying discs, landing, people walking out that look like people with, jumpsuits on or whatever, and a thing on the, some kind of logo on the thing. And there's a lot of history that's very specific about like physical craft, humanoid beings, and all of this. As soon as we get into the Skywatcher world, it's almost like they're starting with a blank slate and they're going, we don't know. we don't know what any of this is, but we're hoping to find out, and we're going to do the work to find out. And it looks like a lot of like there's some jellyfish things and there's some light stuff, and I don't know. I just feel like how can you know about if you know about the history of this topic, it gets very, very specific with some of these cases as to what we're dealing with. And I just feel like this whole discussion that's happening around Skywatcher and News Nation in general seems to be very like fuzzy. Does anyone else feel that way? Or am I just like, do you guys pick up on this at all? Does this make sense? I feel like I'm articulating something that's really hard to articulate, but
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. And I was thinking, I think something similar where they were talking about a lot of imagery. So we're going to have it on night vision, infrared, FLIR, whatever they have. And I guess that's a good starting point. I think that's great. But we've seen how people react to videos and still images. If it's blurry, it's
yeah.
fake. And if it's clear, it's fake. So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. So I'm not exactly sure what their purpose of imagery is. I'm not exactly sure if, well, we'll get some good images and make it part of disclosure. If we get some good images, we can figure out propulsion. If we get some good images, we can figure out patterns. I don't know what they're going to do exactly with this imagery, which right now seems like their primary goal. Now, that may be a warm-up for something totally different that we're unaware of. But I was a little like, okay, what do you, like, let's say you get a really good photo of a Tic Tac. The people in the field, like you and I, are just going to be like, yeah, these things are real. And then I think most other people will be like, oh, I've seen these before. Oh, AI. It's an AI-created image.
Yeah.
So if their goal is to have footage to sway the public, I don't think that's going to work. And again, I'm not
ever going to
discouraging them.
work.
Great organization. But I was kind of like, what comes after the imagery? And I don't know if they're at, maybe they don't even know yet. I don't know. You know what I mean?
I don't think in today's age, like, we have the Metapod UAP video. You've both seen that, I think.
Yeah.
That is a really clear video of a UAP. And as far as I know, it's not been completely debunked. But as far as I know, I don't know of any debunks. It looks maybe a little bit balloon-like at times, but that's a really clear image of a UAP. And it's really close up. And it's close up and sharp at maybe a distance of 100 meters or so. So let's say
really good.
Let's say Skywatcher gets the same thing. It's still as useless as the Metapod video. Because it's no different.
Matt Pine said they're going to be collecting tons of sensor data. Like they've got a whole suite of sensors that are going to be like the video is just one piece of this.
The video is for us. The video is for us to show on stream so that we can hopefully generate more traffic to what they're doing. I'm fully behind that as a concept, but they need to understand that the videos that they show probably aren't going to do anything and may even possibly have the opposite effect to what they think. If we get a let's call it a Chris Bledsoe like video of a Tic Tac, even if it's in daylight and we're seeing something, I think Jake said, what was it, 1,000 feet away or something?
4,000.
4,000 feet away.
Yeah.
That's, with the eyes, that is close, and it can evoke a feeling, and you can look at it and it can be like, okay, wow. But that doesn't translate to video, and it never will. What they would have to show on video, if they were going to just do this with video and nothing else, they would have to land one, and they would have to walk up to it and put their hands on it. I don't think anything else will be impressive enough. Jake Barber's first interview, we got the egg. As silly as people might think the video looks, if it's legitimate, that is a close-up, less than 100 meters away video and it's clear of a UAP, an egg-shaped UAP being transported, and yet everyone made fun of it. So I don't think...
Well, that's a question though. Who's everyone? Because is everyone a bunch of intel guys that are masquerading as whoever on the internet, trying to sow confusion and distrust of all this information? Because that could be part of it. That probably is part of it. We have to assume that at least some of the criticism of that is coming from people who just don't want to.
Whenever I see a video like that, and before I see any comments, my first question in my head is okay, is this going to change the world?
Mm-hmm.
And it never does, and that's fine. I'm here for more than video. I'm here for a real change of everything.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to say is that video from a legitimate source of a helicopter pilot transporting an egg-shaped UAP at close range wasn't enough. So what is enough? It has to be here's an egg-shaped craft. Look at it, watch it land. There it is. It's 12 feet away. I'm going to go and put my hands on it. And I've put my hands on it now. That's the video we need to see. And I am assuming that even when that video hits the internet, people will go, it's AI. That's the
well,
point
we're kind of in a post video, post photo evidence world. And that, you make a really interesting point. You raise a very interesting question. If they are able to get it to land, then what is the next step? Do they have a team of people in biohazard suits with Geiger counters that are going to go up to this thing and like scan it and make sure it's safe? Or are they going to just walk up to it in t-shirts and like touch it with a hand? Or like, there's got to be, I'm sure they have thought this through, and I'd be really interested to know what is the next phase of the operation once you do get a successful landing.
For me, the life-changing video truly is it has to be nothing short of it lands, the NHI exit. If it's not a drone of some sort, the NHI have to exit the vehicle, and even then people will say it's fake. But I'll judge that for my own. I'll judge it based on people like Barbara's character. I will try. If Barbara released that video tomorrow, I'd trust it. That's an important aspect of this.
I'm inclined to agree, and I think that the way they went to great pains to say how they are collecting reams and reams of data, that they are going to publish all of their data. They're going to make it publicly available. It's going to be anyone can look at it. So I would assume that if they're able to get a craft to land, they would continue to roll and continue to collect data, and assuming it stays there and they're able to recover it. Question is, what is the recovery team like? Where does this go? Does it go? Where's the facility that's going to house this object if they get one, if and when? Because they're saying they plan to get one by, did they say they were going to get one by 2025?
They want to answer the question in 2025, basically.
They're going to have to take it to a facility. It's going to have to be under lock and key. And then the question is, and we kind of talked about this before we went live, he says specifically in there, their goal is to make a profit. This one key thing he says, our goal is to be profitable. This costs a lot of money to do what we're doing. So the question is, like, how do you profit off of something like this and make your data available and do all these things? Do they just lock it up and license access to it? Or, where does that go? How does that work? Can you own something like that? I guess you can. If you can protect it and keep it safe, then it's yours, right? I mean, what if they want it back? They're like the government, and that's the other, there's this whole kind of hazy connection between the government. He's like, we want the government involved. They kind of are involved. They're not involved. They're not all bad people. Some of them are good. It's all a bunch of individuals. It's not one monolithic thing. It's, we work with different branches of the government for different reasons. And, then he says something kind of like public-private partnerships are important because, the corporate sector can do some things that the government sector can't do. There's sort of like laying out, it felt like they were laying out the case for a controlled rollout of this stuff in a way that I don't know. The sense I'm getting is that the people who are all behind this already know which direction it's going to go. They just have to steer this ship there and then create a legal precedent for everything that they're trying to do so that they can have control over it when it hits the civilian world. And maybe that's overthinking it, but it feels like that. I don't know.
Yeah, these are all really good questions. Regarding the egg video, I watched it a couple times. But what was more interesting, I went through the YouTube comments and I got about 300 deep, and no one said anything positive. No one. It was just kind of so. If it's real or not, that's a lesser concern of mine. My concern is, does this move things forward? And it seems like it didn't. And so that kind of brings us back to these videos, these images. If it's too clear, it's fake. If it's blurry, it's a bird. And I don't think the right way moving forward is imagery. You ask a really good question. Well, you asked a couple of really good questions, Clinton. I was thinking the same thing where, earlier I said, well, if they think like us, no one likes to be tricked. No one likes to be baited. No one likes to have their stuff downed. And then we'll add another layer. No one wants their stuff taken. Okay? And that's a very good question. What if a UAP does land? Let's just say it's a drone. No one's inside. All right. And then we haul it off and word gets back to wherever they're from.
Yeah.
And they're like, dude, that was like my favorite drone. We need to go get it back. Then what? I mean, I don't want to be around if something shows up and wants that back, because it will take it. Yeah, I mean, this is all speculation. I know UAPs have crashed and apparently they haven't taken them back, right? But this is a little bit different where the others they seem to be crashes, inadvertent crashes, just accidents. And this has the potential of developing into, we tricked you, we took your stuff, it's ours. I'm not particularly comfortable with that.
I'm 100% with you there. And it's a question of like, there's so many questions here. Like this whole interview is just gives you a million more questions. For one, he's saying the dog whistle that they use, their electrical signal that they use, they have some technology that they deploy that has a 100% hit rate, generating a response from the phenomenon. Okay. Then they're saying they have psionic assets, or people who are neuro meditators or whatever they want to call it now, that can also contact these craft and bring them down. But the craft are very different. Some of them are jellyfish. Some of them are eggs. Some of them are Tic Tacs. They actually classified 9 different groups, if I remember correctly. There's 9 different classifications. Yep. And maybe we could show that list if you've got it, Xander. You could put it.
They haven't actually published it yet.
Oh, but he just said it. I was going to make a slide for
it. They will publish it after their next episode releases, but he didn't want to take away from the people that sort of they introduce a few more people in the next episode.
Yeah, and sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
I was kind of getting the impression it's a classification system that was displayed in the Immaculate Constellation document.
Yes.
I was under the impression it was kind of those. And then just to back up for a minute, I took profiting different, and I'm not saying you're wrong or I'm right. I don't really know. It was kind of a fuzzy answer. I took it as we need to pay the bills. I didn't take it as we need to have profit. And I think his language was just a little clunky because he kind of started the sentence with, it needs to be profitable, but then he says we have to pay the bills. So I'm not really sure what that meant.
I was confused by that too, and I may be misinterpreting how he meant that, but it just seemed like, I mean, on the one hand, yes, it's probably multi-million dollars they're spending. I mean, whatever their budget is. He says they have an operating budget, 7 days a week, 7 days a month in the field. Yeah. They have a team of like 15 guys, 10, 15 guys. They're probably all making $100,000 each at least. I mean, they're getting real money. They have real money to do this indefinitely. It's just, how do you generate a revenue stream, even if the goal is just to keep the lights on? what's your revenue stream? Or is there now one thing that leapt to mind was, I forget what's the name of the guy who's funding all this. He's the Silicon Valley guy who's sort of he spoke at the SALT conference. He's the one who interviewed Carl Nell. I can't remember his name, but
Yeah, I forget his name, but yeah, I think he's like the newer version of Bigelow.
right. He's like a
Yeah.
young big. So now it sounds a little out there, but if you're that guy and you have the budget, you have the money, the disposable revenue to just sort of throw at a crazy project, and you also know that you've got a list of people who have been in the legacy program who have now gotten out, and they are telling you for sure this is real.
Alex
Clocus. And then you go, okay, well, for, I don't know, 12 million, I throw $1 million a month at it. 12 million bucks a year or less. Maybe it's $6 million a year, whatever the budget is. And in 3 to 5 years, I'm the only private person in the world who owns this technology. Like, I'll have it in my possession. And then it's almost like discovering a whole new branch of everything. Like, you would be the one group that would have it. So like SpaceX and all of these other companies and like OpenAI and all these other things, it would almost be like you've got something as big or bigger than all of those combined out of left field. You just come out of nowhere. That's a pretty powerful thing. And Matt Pines, he kind of went to pains at the end to explain. He's like, the people who are doing this work already know that this is real. There's no question for them. This is a done deal. So we're trying to get everybody else caught up to that. But when the final moment happens and you all see it, it's not really going to be as new as you think it is. It's going to be a surprise to a lot of people, but we kind of already know. I just thought that was a really interesting, I don't know. It's like they're throwing a Hail Mary on this thing and they feel like there's a definite way to lock it up.
That's what worries me, is when you say the words like lock it up, it's like there's no difference between that and what the private aerospace has been doing for the last 80 years.
Well, how do we know this isn't an extension of private aerospace, just doing this publicly?
It could be. It could be, and that would make it, the latest attempt at moving forwards without incriminating yourself. So we have to ask the question, is it worth it? Do we want to know the truth in this way? I said to you before we went live, like that, incentive aside, if by the end of 2025 I could know the truth of this phenomena, or at least part of the phenomena, in exchange for the monetization of said phenomena, it's a hard question to ask, because the alternative for a lot of people is, another 50 years of the same old, like fossil fuel burning and the same degradation of the planet that we live on. And I said to you, the monetization aspect, yes, it definitely disappears in some way, in the fact that if it involves free energy, then they've got to find a way to monetize the energy portion of things, because free energy is free energy, and the idea that somebody could conceivably charge for free energy doesn't sit well with me personally, especially when we have so many, we still have poverty on the planet as a result of the lack of energy.
Well, that's the real question, is like, let's say that they do get their hands on this technology. They do it in a way that's public and that's open source and that everybody sees. And then the world doesn't change overnight. And it takes a generation, and a generation goes by and we're still kind of trudging along. But, maybe the idea of what we expect, I mean, I think for some people, myself included, I think that there's a point where you imagine, I imagine that there's going to be this big moment, and then after that moment, we're going to like all wake up the next day and realize like, oh my God, now we're in Star Trek world. But even I like have to kind of walk myself back from that and realize like it's going to take a long time. And what if it doesn't go smoothly and doesn't happen right away? Would you be upset? How would that affect you?
I think maybe, okay, to reframe the question in some way, what if this technology becomes public knowledge and we know, you know, it's very powerful technology, similar to nuclear, so we can't know the secrets, but we can have access to it. This technology, free to produce. Once we've built a machine to do it, it's free to produce. What if, you know, I was a family in the current third world and I said, okay, well, if you can't provide this to me for free, my family's going to die. And that the person that's got control of that proprietary knowledge says, well, no, I still need to make a profit, even though it's free for them to produce. That's the sour taste in my mouth, is if this is free energy, if any of this technology is free energy, you at some point you're going to hit a moral problem, which is, I have to give this for free, because otherwise people will die.
Well, they do that with water, though. Like,
exactly.
Remember the guy who's the CEO of Nestle who was like, people don't have a right to water? That's crazy. You know,
there was the Coca-Cola factory in India that was poisoning the water supply because they were using the water to make Coca-Cola. But the people in the local population wanted water, but the Coca-Cola factory took all of their water. And I don't think that will sit with anyone.
I think that's what's meant when people say we don't have the consciousness. Our consciousness is too low as a species right now to accept this technology. I think that's it. That's what it is. It's your consciousness of a group or an individual is expressed through the way they justify their actions, their behavior, their whole, like, everything they're doing. And if you've got people who can only see quarterly profits, they can only think that about that. They have no space in their world for anything else, and everything is about just increasing profit or making the company more efficient, or, you know, dominating an industry. That is incompatible with this technology, because I think what we're struggling with, it seems like, is that we can't imagine a world where this vicious form of capitalism that we exist under now, this exploitative system that I have a million problems with and I talk about a lot, but I don't want to drag you guys down into that argument, but it's a brutal system. I think everybody agrees it's a system that produces Coca-Cola instead of clean water. At the cost of clean water. That system cannot exist, and we can't imagine another world outside of it. If you plug this technology into it, it would destroy us.
The last thing I would say, because I'm definitely taking up too much airtime, I'm just a lowly producer, but somebody in the comments has just said, well, the infrastructure isn't free. You're damn right, it's not free, but it's much, much, much cheaper. And that is a core problem with all of this, is that everything gets more expensive all the time. And with a disruptive technology like free energy, that completely changes infrastructure entirely. All of that infrastructure largely costs how much it does because of energy. So the infrastructure itself, the value of that is human time more than anything else. And human time will always carry a value, because we're here. As humans, we're a finite resource. We have finite time currently on the planet. That will always remain valuable, but everything else aside becomes kind of valueless. So what we're talking about in terms of infrastructure is just human time, and that should carry value for sure, but it's not the total value that we've been experiencing since the Industrial Revolution. It's completely different. It's a completely different kettle of fish.
I don't think you're taking up too much airtime, Xander. I think you're not taking up enough airtime.
Who's that
was a
English
great
guy?
point.
Shut him up.
No, that's the whole point of the show. We're here to talk about this stuff because people want to talk about it, and someone's got to ask these questions. If we don't make the space to think about these big things, then who else is going to do it, right? We've got to do it. I'm actually going to ask you to take over for about 2 minutes because I have to go open the door for a delivery that just showed up. So if you guys could excuse me for 1 second, I'll be right back.
He's literally gone. He's camera off gone. Okay. Well, let's. What do you think happens by the end of 2025? No, I know you said you reached out to Skywatcher and stuff, so that should have, produced some sort of, to email them. It's definitely produced an emotive response for you. So what do you? I know he said by the end of 2025 we should have an answer. How do you feel about that as a prospect?
I do recall them saying that. Was there even a question? What were they? Was
So
this
I think they were.
Was
they
this
were
a
talking
goal
about,
or an actual answer?
So it was a goal initially. I think Ross asked Jake, what are the goals for the Skywatcher project in the long term, and I don't think the impression that I got from his answers is that they're not really thinking much further than 2025 based on and I think he even said based on the data they've gathered already, they expect to answer the question of whether or not this technology and whether or not psionics work by the end of 2025.
Right. Now, I'm starting to recall this, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they also said by then we can determine which ones are legit UAPs and which one could be back engineered, it's a modern drone, whatever. And they wanted to decipher that as well. I'm thinking by 2025, what they wanted to do is have enough data and have it peer reviewed to present it. And I'm anticipating a release of videos, still images, and data boiled down so like someone like me can understand exactly what this means. I think that's where they're going with it. I'm always thinking of the human side of it. So if they even bother to email me back, I'm just a small fish in a big pond. I'm more interested in learning more about maybe how their team feels about this, or if they had any psychological symptoms afterwards. And that's what I was keeping my ear out for, because that's one of the most interesting things about this. So, for example, in Immaculate Constellation, there were a couple UAPs that when you saw them and it took off, for like weeks, you thought you were being watched. It's like, what the hell's up with that?
Yeah.
And it's kind of neat as we talk about this more and I start to learn more. The actual craft, I'm almost disinterested at this point. Because it's like, yeah, antigravitics and it goes really fast. It's got a Hemi. Okay, fine. But, I mean, how do you explain I saw the craft, I had a feeling of doom, and for 2 weeks I thought there was something in my bedroom. It's crazy.
There was that story of, it was in the Immaculate Constellation document, was the aircraft carrier, wasn't it? And it was a whole... effectively a whole crew of the aircraft carrier looking up, and I think it was a triangular craft, and it disappeared without making a noise, and it was an instant disappearal. But it also evoked the sense of dread, or the ominous, anxious, and there was an orange haze. I think there was like an orange hue. That it was that the whole deck was being lit, but not by a light source. That was weird to see. But I think Greer even chimed in on that and said, no, that was definitely a human-made craft.
Right. And I've heard, or at least read, that the black triangles could be back engineered and operated by humans. That does not explain. I felt like I was watched for 2 weeks. I don't get that part. So just say, for the sake of argument, yeah, it's something that crashed. We back engineered it in the black triangles. The Air Force are flying them around and looking down on people's backyards. Why would I get a feeling of dread and doom? It's, and because I don't think it's, oh my God, it's something weird, could be from another planet, I feel dread. It's not that. There's some
Seems
kind
to
of
be
connection
This
mechanical
is
with the
in
what
person
nature.
in the craft.
this is something you experienced, Eric? The doom feeling?
No, no.
I
Mine
missed
was
this.
no, mine was positive. And by the way, I don't know if Xander knows this. That that red orb that visited the aircraft carrier, it's the same exact thing that I saw and Chris Bledsoe saw. Same exact thing. No, we were saying how we have certain craft, and at this point, it's almost like I'm not really that interested in the craft anymore. I'm
Yeah.
interested in the psychological response that people have, which is inexplicable if it's a back engineered craft.
Well, it would
Yeah.
have to be a consequence of the technology. And why would we build... I can't see any particular reason why any form of technology as a byproduct would produce that sense of dread. It doesn't make a shred of sense.
Well, okay. So I have a thought on that. I interviewed Matthew Roberts a while back, and I got in contact with Matthew from you, Eric. You're the one who set that up. And he talked about, did you mention him when you were talking about the feeling of doom? Because he talked about that.
No, we didn't mention him.
He said that when he was on the Theodore Roosevelt, that they were having these sightings, and they were happening all the time around the ship. And he said he had this sense of, I felt like they were here for me. They were coming for me. This had something to do with me personally. And it really went into that. And then he had all kinds of different experiences that followed that event. But what if and in the Immaculate Constellation documents, they talk about the feeling of weirdness around the spheres, right? Is that I interviewed a guy named Eamon Ansbro. His interview just posted yesterday. He's an Irish astronomer. He is awesome. He's awesome. And he's a brilliant, brilliant man and just a very sweet guy. And he's been looking at this forever. And one of the things that he put forth, and he's trying to get people to look at this now, is that he suspects that there is an automated system monitoring the Earth, and at regular intervals, there are windows where craft will predictably appear in certain areas because this is at least partially an automated system, and the spheres have something to do with that. And if you have an automated drone-like sphere that can fly over an area and make everyone around it feel weird and like they want to leave, that has a lot of utility if you're observing people and you don't want them interfering with your technology. You want them to stay away. I mean, it could be like a people repellent. We do it with crowds. We have like those sonic weapons they deploy on protesters and stuff, or tear gas or whatever. Maybe it's something like that. Or do you guys think it's something else, like consciousness related, that's more sinister?
Well, it was, and the Immaculate Constellation document is limited, so I don't know if they know this beyond the document, but not all craft had psychological consequences.
Right.
Which is, I don't get that.
So if it was reverse engineered, you're saying it, then that might be a tell.
Correct, because
if it's a human-made craft.
Yeah, I'm kind of guessing, but if I back engineered it, I don't think the doom comes with it.
So what do you think the doom connection is? What's your take?
I don't know, because I've had a very, very negative experience, doom and dread, after my second UAP sighting. I don't know what that was, and I don't know the purpose of it, but it would make sense to drive away humans for some reason, but I don't know what that reason is and why would it be stronger in other craft and weaker in others. Now, it might help us go down that road. I think you agree with me. I am utterly convinced all UAPs are flown via consciousness. I
Mm-hmm.
think the material interacts with somebody's consciousness. You go in, according to Bob Lazar and some others, there's no controls, there's no buttons, there's nothing, and it just goes. So
Yep.
there's some type of consciousness component to the craft. But why the feeling of doom? And it goes beyond just seeing something unfamiliar. It's almost like a message, like a repellent.
It sounds like it's, yeah, like a countermeasure, like some kind of a repellent, just to keep, to scare game away, or to scare animals away, or to scare, just the stupid humans away, keep them from messing with the stuff. I don't know. That's the thing it's not squaring with me about just going back to the Jake Barber thing, Lou Elizondo, Jake Barber, all these different conversations that sort of happened in the last few years. There's like a parallel history here. We're talking about two different types of UFOs, as far as I can tell. Some that are completely weird and just like weird, and then these historical accounts where it's like the disc landed, the guy got out, the cop walked up to him, said, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "I'm from another planet. I'm here. And do you want to come on board?" They go inside. They walk around. They look at some stuff. Like, unless all of those accounts are just fake or wrong or misinformation or whatever, and that this is what we're really dealing with, there's still a whole other unexplored thing that this whole Skywatcher conversation doesn't touch on. The sense of doom, beyond seeing something that's completely inexplicable, you don't think that's enough to just trigger a sense of doom or sense of peril?
I don't think so.
What if you were faced with a being, like an actual physical being in your room? Like if you saw something for the very first, and you've never, ever, ever seen anything like it. It's the first time you see it.
Yeah, that would. And we talked a little bit about this last time, and I've been thinking about this. So it would be sheer terror. And I think last time, or maybe somebody in the chat was asking, well, why is that? Why is it that just the thought of being in a room, I mean, do your best to imagine being in a room and facing that being and it's looking at you, okay?
Yeah.
That in itself is terrifying, but I think somebody in chat was last time was saying, well, it seems something beyond that. The thought of it terrorizes you. And I was talking to a friend of mine who's really into UAPs, who's an experiencer too, and he said, well, wouldn't you act like that because something harmed you in the past and that is embedded in your DNA? I thought this was brilliant. So I'm thinking, again, just guessing, the sheer terror one would feel is smart because that thing did something in the past. So I'll give a parallel example. This is a great example. So if you walk up to a cobra and it goes to strike at you, you always jump back, okay? Why you always jump back is anyone who didn't jump back is dead. They could not pass that down, right?
Right.
So what happened is, parallel to that, the UAP being occupants, whatever we want to say, perhaps they're kind of like cobras, where we know it's trouble, but we don't know why.
That's a really scary point. That's a really weird.
It's basically fight or flight. Like, as humans in the westernized world, we basically, unless it's against other humans, we don't really none of us have to freeze. People get frozen with fear. That's not something that happens to humans in the westernized world. But I myself have had dreams, for example, where I am frozen with fear, but I can't. It's a feeling that outside of dreaming, I've never had. I've never had it in waking reality, because the reality is not threatening at all. Like everything I could ever need is probably within a 1 mile radius. There's no bears. There's nothing here in the UK that can kill me, except for my neighbours. But by and large, my neighbours are all right so far. But yes, I agree with you. I think there's fight or flight. It seems you've got two responses to, let's call them a higher predator in some way. And maybe it's seeing that in your house which evokes that response. Like it was a long time ago now, but my van got broken into, and they stole a lot of stuff. And that's only ever happened once in my life, but it was a unique experience, albeit very small compared to the kind of experiences you're talking about. But that was a very unique experience, and it evoked a unique response in me, and I felt almost violated and out of control of the situation. And that's nothing compared to what you'd feel seeing this unrecognizable creature enter your room, and just making eye contact with you would be enough. Absolutely, 100%. It would be terrifying.
This is a great opportunity to tease a new beta testing, a shirt I'm beta testing right now.
Terrifying.
Gary Nolan says he saw this in his window looking at him as a child. That's the cover of Communion. I wonder how, okay, maybe we can tie in the show we thought we were going to do with this show too. How much of it is the fact that we've never really, like if you go to the zoo and you see a gorilla behind 6-inch thick plexiglass, you know the gorilla is smart, but not as smart as you. And besides, you're behind the glass. But if you went into a zoo and saw another being that was smarter than you, and there was no glass, and suddenly you're in the room with this thing, we've never really experienced that. At the species level, we don't have any framework for something that can outthink us and outperform us, probably in domains that we don't even know we can operate in, like the telepathic domain. They're going to have abilities that we don't. To be faced with that, and I imagine to some extent it's going to be this way with AI when Skynet becomes self-aware and it just wakes up, or Grok wakes up one day and it's like a person now, a god. That's going to be really weird, because we're going to know one thing's for sure: we're never going to be in control again. For sure. Like, we'll never know really if we're actually in control of anything anymore. There's going to be this new thing now that's in charge. And I wonder, like, on an individual level, do we recognize that? Or, and that is what we're responding to, something that's so alien and so weird? Or are there people out there that it would maybe be like in Close Encounters where, they just get on the ship and they're like, okay, let's go. And it just seems not as terrifying.
Yeah, because I remember my first UAP experience was extremely positive, and others were extremely negative. So it does run the gamut. And I was listening, but I was also thinking when you were talking about the 6-inch glass, it appears that a UAP occupant, the glass is not a barrier to anything, because they can interact with you psychologically. And that's, and some people have explained it like they can read your mind. That's terrifying. You're like it's extremely invasive. And there, apparently, if there isn't a way to defend against it, that if people are aware of that, I would think that would add to their fear, that sense of helplessness.
They talked about, that's something Matt Pines alluded to a little bit, was that part of what they're revealing is this whole psionic side of things. And if you find out that that's like a real, actual domain, and there's this other thing out there that's like really good, it's like you're swimming with sharks. and you just don't know, but you don't know anything about sharks. You just know they're really, really good in the water, and there's a bunch of them.
It's like we're just learning to swim, and then we're jumping into a pool literally filled with sharks that have been swimming for millions of years.
Yeah, that's kind of what it seems like, right?
Yeah, and
yeah, go ahead.
Maybe.
it's sharks with lasers on their heads too to make it even worse. Lasers.
Thank you for that. That was perfect.
Just off my gut instincts and my gut reaction to this is, I seriously don't think. I think all fight or flight responses aside and all of that, I don't think there really is anything to worry about, because we wouldn't be here if we're talking about the technology that's been alluded to by everyone at this point, especially Greer, and we know that the Skywatcher team, they've been heavily involved with Stephen Greer in the past. Greer's just done a podcast with Michael Herrera, and they've talked about his experience again. Based on all of that information, it's hard to imagine that if there were any nefarious intentions involved, that we would be sat here doing a stream about it. That if they wanted to control us, they would do it. And they just don't seem to. It is really like possibly in the worst interpretation of this, the most demeaning interpretation of this, is that we are zoo animals. And I know that you've mentioned that already, and I think that's, at this point, the most likely hypothesis, is that we're being cultivated, not just. And when people say being cultivated or farmed, people immediately go to the whole food thing. And I don't think that's the case. I think we are being guided / cultivated to grow something potentially more important than just, food. That's our go-to as humans, because we love to eat. But
well, you can grow.
There's no evidence. There's
a
no
cow
evidence. Yeah.
and kill it and eat it, or you can grow a bonsai tree.
Yeah.
You can grow. It's like you're right. You're right. It could be something like maybe to a race of beings this advanced, creating a life form and watching it flourish or not, seeding a biosphere and watching it evolve. Maybe that's fun. That's the level they're at. They just kind of, throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. Or maybe there's some kind of utility to the human body at this physical level that it's like climbing into an avatar for them. They climb into an avatar. Now they can drive around in the physical realm. And otherwise they're limited.
Let's say as well that maybe consciousness itself is the be all and end all, and it's just trying to learn about itself, so that the idea would be that people that understand that as a concept, that we are just the big ocean of consciousness trying to find out more about what it is, they will try and cultivate that existence. So they will try and raise consciousness, and so that it has that time to question itself. And that's always been the core belief for myself, is that the farm that we are is experience itself. And that sounds very woo-woo, but that's the sense I'm getting. And I don't think I'm alone in that. I think a lot of people at this point are starting to think that we are just a drop in the ocean. So I've just been trying to connect that ocean with why would we care about the drops. And the idea behind it is that the drops are important. The ocean needs to see the drops to understand what it's made of and things. That's my idea behind it all at the moment. And Clint agrees.
Oh man, it's so big. It's like, how do you even, there's a concrete, I was talking to someone just the other day. I had a really great hour-long conversation with this person who watches the show, and they wanted to spitball something that was on their mind. And so we were talking about it, and essentially, without getting too deep in the weeds on this, It was about is it Airl, AIRL, the nurse who supposedly lived with an EBE after Roswell. There's a nurse who was the only person that was able to telepathically communicate with this being. This is a case that is kind of floating around out there, and a lot of people have read it. It's not hard to find if you just Google around. And supposedly this woman had this ability to communicate. No one else could that they brought in. They brought in all these other experts, all these different people that were supposedly experts at communication. None of them could make contact with this being except this one woman who was a nurse. And so she had a series of sit-down sort of telepathic interviews and got to form a relationship with this being. I think the being's name was Errol. And they talked, and then all of these interviews were written down and put out in a book that this nurse supposedly wrote. And whoever can check me on this knows.
I can give a brief summary on this if you want.
If you've got it, yeah.
Yeah, I have it. So the story you're referring to involves Nurse Matilda O'Donnell McElroy. She allegedly cared for an extraterrestrial survivor of Roswell. And it's all detailed in the Alien Interview book.
Alien Interview, that's the one.
And yes, the being was called Airl, AIRL. And
the notion that this person was trying to drive at was that, and sort of drawn from this book, is that the true base reality, like what our existence here on Earth right now is an illusion, a hologram. You could call it a simulation, same idea, whatever your way to conceptualize it is, same idea. We're trapped in a system, but the base reality is actually a much bigger, much nicer system where all beings are pretty much immortal. You're just you're a soul. You're a frequency. Your being is permanent and forever. So the idea that we're in a physical body is a form of a prison that we've been tricked into, or somehow trapped in, and Earth is the prison. This is what they were explaining to me. Containers, right? So, like, how do you punish a being that's immortal and can't be killed? Well, if you've seen Highlander 2 with Christopher Lambert, Michael Ironside, and Sean Connery, you know that you send them to Earth, and then you have them battle for thousands of years, and whoever chops off their head, that's how you kill them. But the story is basically like that. It's like we banish these immortal beings, we put them in a physical loop system where they're forced to live and die over and over and over again, and they forget that there's another world outside of the prison. So that's the baseline reality. And I was like trying to follow along with it. It was a struggle for me, and I wasn't entirely convinced. But I have to say, it was a great story, and it seemed really interesting. Have you guys ever heard anything like this?
Yes, Buddhism. They talk about
Buddhism,
samsara, the wheel of, what is it? Samsara, it basically is talking about the cycle of having to repeat, and the whole idea is that you escape samsara, which is to realize the truth. And samsara is effectively what we're living day to day.
Does Buddhism have a way of accounting for like a superior supreme being, or some kind of like what we would call an alien or a non-human?
I'm probably not the best person to ask, but because I'm sure there's somebody that could. Yeah, the simple fact of the matter is I'm not a Buddhist at all, but I have studied some stuff to relate to Buddhism, and the answer is the form of Buddhism that I learned about. No, that there is no supreme being, but at the same time, the idea that you live, you die, and then that's it, isn't really a concept either. It's all about the whole, as I said, samsara, which is the circle of life, effectively, and we're trying to effectively escape suffering, and all of the different types of Buddhism. They will use different methods. I did Zazen, which was Zen Buddhism, and the idea, it's a very boring idea, is that you're trying to realize that you are nothing in essence. But that's beyond what we're talking about right here. But that my answer would be that, yeah, no, Buddhism has no deity in that sense, in the same sense. We're not below anything.
Well, Psionic Man just had a great comment in the chat, and I put it up on the screen for a second. It says, to understand Sri Buddha, one must go back to Hinduism, and that absolutely has blue-skinned folk in UAP, etc. And I do wonder how much overlap there is between, there's got to be some substantial overlap between ancient religions, shamanic practices, spiritual wisdom and knowledge, these beings that Jake Barber is talking about and Matt Pines are talking about at Skywatcher. And that seems distinct to me from some of the disc-shaped craft or tic-tac-shaped craft that we've been talking about. It seems like these things are both happening side by side, but there's got to be some kind of hierarchy of beings. If we're not alone and we're not the top of the food chain, then how many more levels does it go? And how many of those are in the physical realm before you go into a non-physical realm? And then you have these beings that would, I mean, it just seems like the longer we talk about UFOs and the more deeply we try to analyze it, it just comes back to this sort of religious conversation about the spectrum of experience, the larger reality, the hierarchy of beings, and where we fit into all of it. And I don't think there's any way around it. I feel like that's ultimately where this goes. So what if we get to a point where it's not only free energy and robotics are doing all the work and we have artificial intelligence doing all of the mental labor, but we also get to a point where we have some sort of a expanded spiritual picture that is actually based in some kind of like actual data. And we can sort of merge the metaphysical and the physical. Then you're talking about a completely different paradigm altogether.
I guess the last thing I would say on that is that even Lou Elizondo himself talked about science and religion being at two opposite ends of the pyramid, but as they both go up, they get closer and closer together, to the point where they converge at the top and everything becomes one big thesis, in effect.
I've got a clip pulled up from the Jake Barber interview I thought we could show, and it is about 6 minutes, 5-6 minutes. And they're going to talk a little bit about just some of the things that we touched on earlier. And I thought we could show this real quick. Let me see if I can share my screen. And this is some really great questioning by Ross. Let's see, share screen. Here we go. Share.
Are you still planning to do that?
We're certainly open to it. We would love that if that happened. I mean, getting to experience exotic material would be amazing. I think that would be, I think everybody wants that. And yeah, it would be nice to have government involvement. But this is, this isn't just in this realm. There's the private sector and there's the government sector. And we've seen how each of those sectors has handled a variety of goods and services and has produced things. And there's pros and cons to each, whether you're trying to build a bridge or manage a department of administration for some function. And it's the same in this realm. It's unavoidable. Again, we're doing everything, legally. I'll tell you, everyone on our team, before they come and work for us, I kind of make this promise when we're looking to hire people. I go, look, we'd love to have you. Here's what we're doing. These are the 4 pillars that drive our decision-making on what kind of projects we're going to take on. First of all, it needs to be legal. It needs to be safe. It needs to be fun, and it needs to be profitable. Now, that last one, profit. This thing costs money. Like, we are asking a lot, and we respect the people that work for us. We don't expect them to come work for free. This can't be done in part-time. You can't sacrifice your weekly golf round and come join us for that. We take this seriously, and we're fortunate enough to have folks provide us the financing in order to operate on a humble budget and stretch this out as long as we can so we could get to level 6 in our framework. But to have the right balance between government and private. That's why since the very beginning we've talked about a public-private partnership, and that's ultimately where we would like to get with this. Because yeah, you could do this without the government to a certain extent, but you can't do it entirely without them. And why would we want to? Like, uh, the government is needs to be in place, and I'd rather just improve upon the relationship rather than do without it.
You know, there's a lot of things that you've said today that I think a lot of our audience are going to find absolutely exciting and mind-blowing. But I think the one thing that's in your report, in the framework document, that really leapt out at me is that you make a very bold claim that by following the framework's 6 levels, Skywatcher will either validate or definitively rule out these techniques, that is, electromechanical signaling or neuromeditative interaction, reaching a conclusive determination by the end of 2025. What the implications of that are, correct me if I'm wrong, you will, by the end of this year, you predict, know whether it is possible to electromechanically or neuromeditatively invite a non-human intelligence to engage with humanity.
Yeah, I would say, Matt, I'll do a quick answer and you can take over. But I would say, based on our progress so far and the framework we've set out, I think, and how much progress we've made so far, I think greater things have been done in a less amount of time. So it seems like a very practical goal, and we're not afraid to set that target and go for it. I think goal orientation is important.
Yeah, it sounds a bit absurd. I think only because nobody's tried it, right? So the good thing is this is sort of open field running for this team, and the first few runs they've got pretty far down the field, and so yeah, I think we're not letting our foot off the gas. Like, we want to continue to refine, expand, improve the operations, the rigor of the experiments. You know, the first 2 were essentially learning trials, right? I think now we're hitting our stride, and I think we're already going to see quite dramatic shifts in the level of information we're able to collect. And so I think it's not an unreasonable extrapolation to, also, set a target downrange for us to aim at, right? Like, this shouldn't be like a indefinite activity like that goes on for year after year after year, and we keep moving the goalposts, right? And it becomes this kind of, thing, right? And we want to make a clear statement. We want to achieve a certain level of confidence. We want to achieve a certain level of high confidence in the data that we're gathering, and we want to share that with the public as soon as possible to resolve these questions as quickly as possible, right? We have no interest in just having this be an indefinite thing. Like, we want to get to a conclusion. We want to get to a resolution on at least some of these questions, right? I think a lot of these questions that are going to then be opened up are going to take a lot longer to resolve, but I think that's where we want to shift the conversation as quickly as possible.
I truly believe, Ross, real quick, I truly believe that regardless of where we are at the end of 2025, when discovery comes and when a level 6 disclosure happens, which I believe wholeheartedly it will, we will look back on our effort in 2025 as Skywatcher, and it will be the starting point, and it should be revered as the launch point for how we got to level 6 and how others will have gotten there if they beat us to it.
Gentlemen, I want to put this in its context. If you pull this off, this is a scientific exploration achievement that I think overshadows humanity's greatest ever achievements. I mean, this would be one of
this
the
next part
defining
is really
moments in human
important
history, wouldn't it?
That's a heavy thing to take to heart, but I agree with you. But I just would say that part of why I think we are able to make the progress we have and are going to make is being done on the backs and shoulders of people that have created technology and educational references for us to even do this type of experimentation to begin with. Like, even just the camera technology, radar technology, all the scientists that are coming to help us out are bringing with them things that weren't available even 5-10 years ago. So for us to take credit for that, we're more like my good friend Don Paul says, we're like the reverse prism, if you will, that takes refractive light or takes a light beam and turns it into a rainbow. We're doing the opposite. We're taking all the colors of the rainbow, concentrating them, and turning them into a concentrated beam of light. And I think that's kind of, if we get there, we were just the group that came along and was able to take all of these resources and direct them and apply them to this subject and this question and these hypotheses in order to reach that conclusion.
Yeah.
Matt, you
one
obviously
thing I
have
would-
a sense of history here. I mean, I'm interested in getting your personal emotional reaction to what you're involved in. I mean, if you pull this off, this is history, isn't it?
I mean, yes, in a certain sense. I also think there's a certain matter of inevitability associated with this, right? Like, I
Here we
think
go.
there are an increasingly, large number of individuals in and out of the government that are aware of the reality of this phenomenon, right? So it's as if there was a secret group of scientists that had already made a discovery by sending, submersibles down to the Marianas Trench and had discovered a bunch of exotic, jellyfish living, 30,000 feet down, right? And they had written secret reports to each other. They had collected samples, and so it was a fact for those individuals, right? And then, James Cameron comes along and builds a submersible and brings a film crew and goes down to the depths and takes pictures, maybe even collects some samples and brings it back for the rest of the scientific community. You would herald that as a massive discovery, but in a certain sense, it was already known, right, to be true, right? It's a
Okay, we can stop there, but they're really laying it out. They seem really confident.
Should probably just say what level 6 actually is as well. I know they mentioned it a few times. So they have 6 levels of information output, let's call it. So level 6 for them is full revelation of the apparent nature and implications of the phenomena, integration of new knowledge into scientific understanding and policy, and ongoing research shifts from proving existence to understanding details, and it's now a part of normal science. That'd be cool.
I think we've got a black screen. Do you have a? Oh wait, I only saw
It doesn't
black
matter. I've read it out anyway. It doesn't matter.
That's all good.
That would be cool.
Yeah, level 6. We're gonna
By the
take
end
this
of
thing all the way to
2025?
level 6.
End of 2025 for that. That'd be nice.
I don't know. I can't handle any more big news in 2025. I'm all like, my adrenal glands are all tapped out. They look like just shriveled up raisins.
It makes me wonder if they were to do something in 2025, how it would affect, if there would be a knock-on to the claims that other people have made. In particular, Chris Bledsoe, who has talked about 2026, Easter 2026. And I wonder if they would be connected at all.
Well, so the Chris Bledsoe thing is a great point. Chris Bledsoe seems to be able to do this consistently at will with, as far as I could tell, 100% hit rate. Why is he not out there with Skywatcher? Or is he? He should be there.
They did. Somebody has asked Bledsoe if he's working with them, and I cannot for the life of me remember the answer that he gave. I think it may have been a cryptic answer. So I'm inclined to believe he's at least been in contact with them.
Also, did you catch the part where they were like, where Ross is like, you guys have a 50 caliber machine gun when you go out. Why do you have that? And he's like, oh, that's just to make sure that we're able to continue doing the work that we do without any interruption or something. He has some kind of like weird answer to that. And it made me wonder, like, what is that all about? Like, who's after you? Who would crash that party?
Yeah, I didn't bring it up earlier, but that I was like, what? So so this is what they said. They have a 50 caliber machine gun, and they promise to never use it. And that would lead one to the question, why do you have it? Like, what? If you're never going to use it, why do you have it?
Right.
What?
It's not to fight aliens, for sure. There's no reason. Yeah, I mean, I think everybody would agree that would just be silly So it's got to be for use against other people. So what other people are you worried about showing up when you're doing this? Are they worried
Well,
about like another group coming in and
yeah. So fr- from what I understand about UAPs, a conventional weapon does nothing. You can't shoot it down with a projectile. So there goes that. And then he said, well, if it's flying, you can't just shoot at flying things. So that goes against the FAA if we're not going to do it for that. And then they're like, so, maybe Ross brought it up. Somebody brought it up. They said, well, what if it's like a foreign actor who wants to take it? And I was like, but what are the chances of that? I mean, they're
where
not
would they
saying,
take
oh,
it?
we're going to this address and somebody followed. That was their only reason they gave. But then I was like, well, why would you need a 50 cal? Like that you could kill a building with
You
a
don't
50
need that for
cal.
humans.
Yeah, I
Unless
just
you're
didn't get
shooting
it.
at like a truck or something or like a
Yeah.
helicopter. Like what would you? But even then, it's like there was something really strange about that. And then Ross let it slip somewhere in there. He said Utah, and he caught himself when he said it.
Oh.
He goes, it's so quick. I wish I wrote down the time when he did it, but he said something about, how did he phrase it? He said there's something going on at another site in Utah or at another the way he phrased it sounded like he totally slipped up, and he said he inferred that what they were doing was in somewhere in Utah.
Yes.
And he
Yep.
stumbled, and you could if you look right in that one moment, he realizes he did it. You could see it on his face, and I think everybody kind of like realized it, and then he just rolled right through it like a professional, and that was weird. And then someone had a theory about where that was in Utah. Was that you, Xander?
Well, just the idea that Utah is apparently the place for UAP back engineering and research at this point, and it's Dugway Proving Grounds.
That's where it is.
And if you've not seen the deep underground military base video put out by UAP GERB yet, it's so good. Like it convinced me that Dugway is now basically the epicenter of everything. It's the land that they control is so vast, and the evidence that of the size of the operation going on underground, it's just overwhelming. So I'll find the video and I'll put it in our Discord live links for
I have to
the
watch
latest.
this.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I'm always praising UAP GERB. I've never spoke to him, but I would love to, because I'm sure he's got one hell of an opinion on something like that. But everything he puts out is absolute gold. If you're not into the whole woo-woo psionics thing, don't worry, because he doesn't need it. He will just
doesn't.
prove on paper. He proves
I don't
on
know
paper
how.
what's going on.
I want to know what this guy's research process looks like.
It's crazy good.
He's putting out like these. Just everything has so much information. Where do you find all this stuff?
He is without a doubt, and I wish I could do what he does, but he's without a doubt the next generation of researcher in this field, and I hope for his sake he continues to have a job, and that we don't find out the truth, because the stuff that he's revealing is absolutely unbelievable.
Well, can you give a little bit about the underground bases? 'Cause I haven't seen this. What's something in there that he?
So on paper,
blew your mind?
he goes into. He compares maps that have been leaked and shared by various entities within the US government. He then goes into the patents for the nuclear-powered devices that would literally build these tunnels. And then he talks about some of Greer's witnesses, some of whom he's been in contact with directly, and obviously won't share the names of who they are. He then, I think he talks about a direct witness that he's spoken to that knows of Dugway Proving Grounds, how to get into it, where the location is, and I would be doing a disservice to him by trying to explain
sum it
anything,
up.
because he's all about the paper trails and,
Yeah.
and things like that, and he does a great job with it. And that came out 2 weeks ago, and it's a sin that it's only got 50,000 views. But I'll place that in the live links in the Discord now, so everyone should watch that 100%. And if you've not watched anything else he's done, you need to just spend a day watching everything he's done, because it's incredible. It's incredible what he's doing. At the same time, the psionics conversation is still just as important, but it's there for the people that don't like that conversation. There's enough there to convince you.
Yeah, it's the underground thing. It makes me wonder. Richard Dolan has this idea of the breakaway civilization, sort of the secret space program, where like you get this program that's running, and it's got tens of thousands of people working for it, and they're all in these underground bases, and they have all this technology. And at a certain point, there must be a temptation to just start to like break off and do your own thing, and like go set up a shop on another planet. You know, we don't know how big these bases are, but there's so many of them rumored to be there, and they're so huge. Supposedly, I've heard. Does UAP Gerb get into this maglev system? Supposedly,
Yes.
there's like a train that goes from coast to coast.
Yeah, and he also talks about the insane amounts of money that has gone into the research of maglev trains, even though we don't really use them all that much. And he talks about, you know, traveling from the east to the west coast, I think in like less than an hour using the trains. And yeah, there's a lot in there. It's definitely and in terms of the size of these bases, we're talking like thousands and thousands of miles of
Just
of
underground
tunnel. Yeah,
deep, layers and layers deep that just keep going. And I wonder how deep they go. S4 is supposedly, well, what Michael Stratt in his thing, he said, I think there was like 5 or 6 levels to S4. Goes like 6 levels deep, I think.
You might be interested to know that I can look out my window here and see one of them. I live below Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado. That's where NORAD is.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Have you ever
it's
gone
like-
up there? Do you see anything? Can you see, is it all underground? What's it like there?
Yeah, it's all underground. You can't. It's reached off the main paved roads here, but there's a sign, you know, like official business only or whatever. There's a gate at the bottom, and then the road winds kind of far up the mountain, and there's just like a giant blast door that would survive a nuclear weapon. But yeah, I can see it at my house. I go mountain biking up there all the time, and then the actual summit's covered with a bunch of antennas and other technology. It's kind of neat.
I wonder if the blast door is the door they show in the show Stargate. There's this exterior shot they always cut to of like a Jeep driving into this giant door in the side of a mountain, and then they go to their interiors. I wonder if that's the one. Supposedly that's
Could
where the
be.
Stargate was.
Could be.
We're gonna
Yeah,
find
they
out Stargate's real. It's all real.
Yeah, they haven't let me in. If they do, I'll be sure to tell you.
Cheyenne Mountain Comp. I see it. Yeah, here it is. This is the.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at the picture now.
Yeah, that's where NORAD is.
That's so crazy. Oh
Yeah.
my God. Wow. Well, guys, we got to wrap it there. It's 4:00. I gotta change gears here. But
think,
this has been a really fun conversation.
just before we leave as well, our Discord, and this wasn't organised by us, but I mean, I'm really happy that people have taken it upon themselves to organise it, and at least one of us will be in attendance. I will try my best to be there, but some of the people within our Discord have organised some sort of open mic for experiences, and it's
That's
taking place
cool.
in the Discord. If you join our Discord, you'll see it in the general chat. And yeah, I will personally do my best to be there. It's a bit of an awkward time for me and my family, but I will absolutely try my best. But yeah, as far as I'm aware, it's a place where people can just talk about the wildest of experiences that they've had, and I encourage everyone to join the Discord so that they can join in that conversation.
What's the time and date? Do you have that info?
So we've got April 6th, so Sunday, 9 p.m. CET, 3 p.m. EST, 12 p.m. PST.
Oh, okay. I can do 3 p.m. That's Sunday. Okay.
So absolutely brilliant for the community to organise something like that. Myself and Clint are already spread extremely thin with everything that we try and do all the time. So it's really good that we just see people taking it upon themselves to do stuff that they need to do.
But it's cool.
Chris
there's
has just
so
told
much...
me he's going to make an event for it as well in the Discord, so it's easy to find.
And shout out to Chris, by the way, for doing so much. Like, Chris is the heart and soul of the Discord. Like, you really do yeoman's work, Chris. And I just want to say, like, we don't say thank you enough. Everybody send some love his way, because it's a lot of work to wrangle the community and get people involved and stuff. And he's just everywhere. He's like Johnny on the spot with everything. So
I guess the other thing I'll say is we didn't manage to get to call-ins tonight. I think we have to rethink about how we do them. Maybe we need to dedicate one entire episode, because call-ins are awesome but really time consuming. So maybe we dedicate an episode a month just for call-ins so that everyone can just splurge whatever they're feeling. But yeah, apologies from myself for not being able to get to that, but hopefully we can hear from you all on Sunday at the Experiencer open mic.
And I want to throw it out there too. I'll put up a poll on the YouTube channel, but we paused Members Only Mondays for 90 days. That was the idea, was to put it on pause and focus that time on other things. But I've had a couple people reach out and say, well, another live stream during the week might be a good idea. Would you ever do it again? And maybe, Xander, maybe we just do a day. Maybe we do a second day during the week and we just do calls. That's all it is.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to just connect with the community just that little bit more. And as Eric said, we do seem to try and work with the community as much as possible, and it's just so hard with the families and the different time zones. It's so tough.
Yeah, you guys at home, like, if you're watching, like, really, we are spread across continents. Our whole team is everywhere. Like, right now, Eric, you're in Colorado, Xander's in the UK, I'm in Florida, and we've got people all over the world trying to work on the same thing. And a lot of us have kids, or we got other things going on, or day jobs, and it's just like trying to do it in the little hours in between. Getting that dedicated like 4-hour block where you can really sit down and do some like focused work is hard. So it's cool that we're able to pull it off at all. And we are going to have some cool stuff coming out in the next few weeks. There is some new stuff that's going to be rolling out. So that is exciting, but it only happens if we take the time away to do the behind the scenes stuff to make the other things happen. Eric, is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
Yeah, I wanted to add, I am reading the live chat on the side. You have some very funny, really funny people, and they're writing some really clever, funny things. Somebody solved my problem getting into NORAD. They recommended I just wear an elk costume and just kind of wander up the road. Won't be suspicious at all. So I might try that. I'll have to get back to you.
We're extremely lucky that YouTube comments doesn't allow GIFs, because there's a GIF floating around, and it's my fault. There's a GIF floating around our Discord that just keeps coming back over and over again, and it's not appropriate at all.
I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, you know which one. If you join the Discord, you get to find out.
You get to find out. Last thought is that one of the best things that Richard Dolan said when he was kind enough to sit down with us was that our community was outstanding. He made it a key point to like say that. He was like, you guys are so nice to each other. They're just a very cool group. And he was very impressed by that. He said that even within his own community, sometimes there's some shenanigans, or people get a little, upset about different things. And he said he was really impressed with how well everybody gets along and how much of a robust conversation there is. So bravo, guys. You're doing a great job. Okay, gang, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it there. Thank you for watching. Thank you for joining us this Friday. Go check out the Amon Ansbro interview that just posted yesterday. He is outstanding. I guarantee you will find that fascinating if you're into cutting edge research that is really pushing the boundaries of what we know in this space. Amon is your guy, and he needs to be involved with the Soul Foundation quick, fast, and in a hurry. And I'm going to reach out to him and say he needs to get in touch with Jake Barber and the team as well. Let us know what you think in the comments. Don't be shy. Feel free to send out an email to us. Let us know if you have an idea for a show. We'd love to talk to you about it. And we will see you again next week. Until then, keep looking up.